What sports was like as a kid. You know, it's funny when we think about sports today compared to how it was when we were kids. There are so many differences. But what exactly has changed? Join me as we take a look back at what sports was like as a kid back when I was young. When I was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, there were really only three sports that we played. There was baseball, football, and the girls did cheerleading. Baseball was huge. Every single school had a baseball team. In fact, my dad coached my little league team. We didn't have any fancy equipment back then. We just had a glove, a bat, and a ball. We would play from March through October. Our games were scheduled every day after school and we played until sunset. My dad never told us to go home because it was getting dark outside. He would yell at us to keep playing until our mom called us off the field. We would play all day and get so dirty. My uniform would be covered with dirt, grass stains, and mud. And if I got hit by a ball, I would end up with bruises all over my legs and arms. Back in those days, helmets and protective cups were somewhat optional. But you know what? No one cared. It was all part of the game. We also didn't have any fancy shoes back then. We wore the same pair of baseball shoes for every game. And if they got too worn out, we got a new pair. We didn't have fancy cleats or metal spikes on our shoes. We had rubberized nubs that barely dug into the ground. I remember slipping and sliding all over the place when I was trying to run bases. That was part of the fun, and I loved it. We also didn't have any training or stretching before the game. We would just show up, put on our uniforms, and start playing. I remember running the bases so hard that I pulled a muscle in my side and I couldn't breathe. But I still had fun. I learned to push forward, to play through the pain. Now, of course, these days things have changed. Kids have all kinds of fancy equipment, shoes, and training before the game. They even have sports psychologists to help them focus. But back in my day, we didn't have any of that stuff. We just showed up and played. And we had fun. We learned how to work together and we developed some great friendships along the way. Sure, maybe we didn't have all the fancy stuff, but we didn't need it. We had something much more important: heart. Another sport that was huge back in the day was football. Football was a rough sport, but that's why we loved it. We didn't have any fancy protective gear back then. We had the cheapest helmets that felt like you were wearing cast iron and shoulder pads that hardly ever fit right. My dad described them as being one size fits all whenever I complained about the way they fit. But that was part of the fun. We would get so beat up. I remember coming home with bruises all over my body. My mom would ask me where I got them. I would tell her I got them playing football. She would always shake her head and say, "You kids are crazy." But the truth was, she loved that we were all outside, playing and having a good time, something she told me years later when I was an adult. Now, of course, these days things have changed. Kids have all kinds of fancy protective gear. They have mouth guards, knee pads, shoulder pads, and even pads that protect their ankles. But back in my day, we didn't have all that stuff. We just played the game with heart. Now, football is considered a dangerous sport, and it is. But back in the day, we didn't know that it was dangerous. We just played the game because it was fun. We loved tackling each other and trying to score touchdowns. Sure, maybe we got hurt sometimes, but that was part of the game. We would just laugh it off and get back out there. These days, kids can't do that. They have to sit out for weeks with injuries. But you know what? That's not the way we played back in the day. Back then, we played until we couldn't move. Another sport that was huge when I was a kid was cheerleading. Cheerleading was mainly for girls. Sure, there were the guys who spotted for the girls. But for the girls, it was a real sport. And the best part about cheerleading was the snacks. Yes, that's right. The snack shack was open for business. And the snack shack was the best place to be during halftime. It didn't matter what sport was being played. If the snack shack was open, we were there. We would buy sodas and candy and popcorn and nachos. It didn't matter what it was, we would eat it. It was the perfect place to hang out and meet your friends before or after a game. It was also the perfect place to sneak in a kiss when mom and dad weren't looking. I remember my first crush. We were both 13 and we had that first kiss right behind the snack shack. The snack shack had everything you could want to eat. They had hot dogs, hamburgers, pizza, fries, popcorn, nachos, candy, and drinks. And of course, everything was deep fried. The best thing about the snack shack was the prices. A soda was only 50 cents. A hamburger was $1, maybe $2, and a pizza slice or a hot dog was $1. Of course, these days things have changed. The snack shack is now called the concession stand. And instead of selling food, they sell merchandise. They have t-shirts and hats and jewelry and keychains. And of course, everything is overpriced. A soda is now $5, a hamburger is now $8, and a pizza slice about $5. The worst part about the concession stand is that they don't accept cash. You have to use a credit card. And of course, they charge a service fee. So instead of paying $16 for a hamburger and a soda, you now have to pay $20. The worst part about the concession stand is that they don't even sell nachos anymore. Nachos used to be the best thing on the menu, but they got rid of them years ago. They said it's because kids don't like nachos anymore, but I think it's because they wanted to make more money. They knew that if they got rid of the nachos, parents would be forced to buy more expensive food. Now, of course, these days things have changed. The way we play sports now is much different than it was back in the day. But you know what? Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe kids these days are smarter, and they understand that their health is important. Maybe they know that they can't tackle each other without getting hurt. And maybe they understand that they need to stretch before they play. But I kind of miss the old days. I miss when we didn't have all the fancy equipment and rules. I miss when we could just play the game the way it was meant to be played. With heart. So the next time you watch your kid play sports, take a moment to appreciate the innocence of youth. Appreciate the fact that they're learning how to work together and develop great friendships along the way. Don't worry about the fancy equipment or the rules. Just let them play the game the way it was meant to be played. With heart. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this nostalgic look back at kids' sports in the 70s and 80s. If you have any stories of your own to share, I would love to hear them. Just comment below and let me know what sports was like when you were a kid. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.